Trump tries to make a deal to reopen the government. Mueller calls out a fake news article written by BuzzFeed. And lastly, a senior Democrat thinks teenagers shouldn't be able to wear MAGA hats. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. So over the weekend, President Trump made some huge concessions in an attempt to reopen the government. He offered to give a 3-year extension for DACA of work permits for DACA recipients and 300,000 temporary status for immigrants in exchange for 230 miles of a barrier on the Mexican border. This was not the only thing Trump had promised. He also said he would provide $800 million in humanitarian aid and $805 million in port and border screening security. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is expected to hold a vote on a bill that contains these new provisions later this week on the Senate floor. Now, as you can see, Trump is ready to make a deal, and in addition to all the concessions he made, he even offered to hold weekly bipartisan meetings with Democrats on immigration reform. However, this appeared to be inadequate for the congressional Democrats. They didn't even hear what he had to say before rejecting these new provisions. What does that tell you about the left? One, they don't really care about effective policy making unless they're the ones doing it, and they don't really care when it will hurt their new voting bloc. Now, Nancy Pelosi went as far as saying Trump's proposal was both, quote, unacceptable, unquote, and a, quote, non-starter, unquote, arguing it won't be enough to restore certainty to people's lives, which I understand that argument, because those who are DACA recipients would only be safe from deportation for 3 years. However, the main point no one likes to bring up is that, well, there's a couple main points. And the first thing is that a lot of the DACA recipients were not brought over here as minors because the qualification to become a DACA recipient was just that you were under 31 years of age by July 2012. So we have grown adults over here that have lived most of their life in Mexico or other countries that are able to live over in America now due to DACA that didn't grow up here. And the other point nobody likes to talk about is that President Barack Obama made this amnesty essentially for these people who are 31 years or younger as of July 12th, unilaterally, unconstitutionally. This was not supposed to happen. The president doesn't have that kind of power. And now Trump is at least trying to compromise his position by giving the Democrats something they want, which is for the DACA recipients to actually legitimately receive amnesty. And Trump is at least extending that out for another 3 years. That way something can be worked out. Now, mind you, I believe that he will eventually, and maybe the Supreme Court will rule on this as well later down the road, that it is unconstitutional for them to be here. But we'll see. But nonetheless, he is at least compromising his position in an attempt to reopen the government and, supply good border security for our country. And the Democrats won't even budge one bit. There is a silver lining to all this. And that is, there are some Democrats, as we've pointed out before, who are drifting away from the group. Another example of that is the Homeland Security Chair, Representative Benny Thompson. He's a Democrat, and he said in an interview with ABC's This Week that he wouldn't be opposed to a wall in certain instances as part of a deal to end the partial government shutdown. He also said the following, quote, I don't think Democrats are opposed to any physical barrier. It's just the president constantly involves his description of a wall just as he indicates Mexico was going to pay for whatever was there. So what we have to do is sit down, work through this, and let the public know exactly what we're talking about and what they can expect. We're not there yet. Democrats historically have supported certain barriers, certain other things to protect this country. Thompson is absolutely right when he states Democrats have historically supported barriers. Case in point was in 2006, where there was bipartisan support to put a physical barrier on our southern border. I also believe Thompson is correct when he states that the two sides need to come together to sit down and talk, which his party's leaders won't do that. So how can we move forward when Democratic leadership won't even entertain the thought to sit down with Trump? Now, unfortunately for Democrats, I believe they're playing into Trump's hand because it appears that he's trying to use the maximum pressure strategy, which he has used against China and North Korea to ease tensions and for them to give in to American concessions. And you have to give the devil its due. So I believe if Trump fails at getting the border wall erected, then Democrats can use this as a tool to go against him for his re-election bid. And I know I've said this before, but to take it even a step further, they can start labeling him a poor negotiator, a horrible deal maker. And that will prove contrary to what Trump ran on back in 2016, which was he was a great deal maker. And Democrats would have an opportunity to at least have one example to prove otherwise. Although I really believe more and more Americans are siding with Trump on his stance with border security. So that means in the end, I'm guessing we'll have at least some parts of the border covered with a border wall in exchange for some sort of amnesty, which some prominent conservatives like Ann Coulter are very against. But this is just my guess anyways. We'll see exactly how that plays out. Meanwhile, Representative Adam Schiff says he will use an inaccurate article from BuzzFeed to investigate Trump. The report claimed that Trump told Michael Cohen, his former lawyer, to lie to Congress about proposed Trump Tower project in Russia. However, the article was quickly disputed by a spokesperson from the special counsel, which said the following, quote, BuzzFeed's description of specific statements to the special counsel's office and characterization of documents and testimony obtained by this office regarding Michael Cohen's congressional testimony are not accurate. Despite this, the writer of the article defends its claims by stating he knows better than the special counsel and his sources are better than any of the investigators, and on top of all that, he's been reporting for 20 years, so he knows what he's doing, is basically what he's saying. And since that's the case, maybe Robert Mueller should hire the guy, since this journalist is doing a better job than the special counsel at finding anything incriminating against Trump. I mean, come on. This is exactly why Trump refers to the press as the enemy of the people. This should be the time where we wake up and realize that we are being played by the media. There are completely different narratives being spit out at us, and nobody's telling the whole story. And now that Mueller is getting closer to wrapping up the report, people in the mainstream media are actually coming out and saying there will be nothing that can be used in the report to impeach Trump. So it may mean that they start discrediting Mueller's work. And it wouldn't really surprise me if they do that, hence that Representative Adam Schiff is opening an investigation into Trump on false pretenses. This and the border wall are nothing but a political game for Democrats. We finally have an outsider in the White House who has made some real progress, and the establishment as a whole can't stand it. This is the third year of investigations, and they have found nothing. Yet they still compare Trump to Richard Nixon, and they still compare this to Watergate, when in reality Watergate took less than a year before investigators found anything incriminating to Richard Nixon, forcing his resignation. We have nothing here. Nothing whatsoever. But it doesn't matter, so long as they can keep the pressure on Trump. All that is doing is eroding people's trust from those who are supposed to lead us. And that's not good. Although we shouldn't blindly follow our leaders, we should at least be able to place some faith in what they have to say and trust them. And by news organizations going against the special counsel only worsens this much needed relationship. There is literally no need for Democrats to further investigate a claim that has been told to them by the investigators to be inaccurate. That's pretty telling, if you ask me. In other news, Democrats aren't only going after President Trump, but they are now going after his teenage supporters. Representative John Yarmuth, a Democrat from Kentucky, said that teenagers shouldn't be allowed to wear MAGA hats. This is after an incident with a group of Catholic students and a Native American elder that occurred at March for Life on Friday in Washington, D.C. Now, there is a lot of ambiguity around the story itself. Some say the kids were yelling, "Build that wall," to the Native Americans, while others saying that it never happened. However, it should be noted that the Native American elder himself stated that they did chant, "Build the wall," which he countered with, "This land was never supposed to have a wall." Now, I have watched this video, and to be honest, I didn't hear anything or anyone saying "build the wall." As a matter of fact, what I did hear is one of the Native Americans chanting not chanting, but telling the kids who were all white that they need to go back to Europe, one, because they're white, and two, this isn't their land. So that was the only racist slur that I heard. And another thing that I've seen that the media isn't portraying really accurately is that the Native American elder initiated the situation by beating his drum while walking in the middle of the students' circle, that is. And at that time, nobody talks about this either. What you see next is the kids kind of joining in with the rhythm of the drum beat, and one of the kids even saying he was so confused as to what is happening right now. So the first thing I would want to address is the elder's response to the imaginary chants he heard. There were no walls when people were first here because America wasn't a country then. During its discovery, nation states were struggling to come about. Now we have a nation state. We, by definition, need borders. So his point that he tried to make was completely ignorant, in my opinion, and I don't even think it's an opinion. I believe that's just a historical fact. And it didn't stop the media from showing a video of him shedding tears as he talked into a camera, saying that, "I don't know what's going on, and we don't need a wall. This isn't what this country's built on. We didn't have borders before." And it's like, yeah, well, it wasn't a country when the Native Americans first inhabited America. And the second point I want to address is that one of the Native Americans yelled at these students, as I told you earlier, that they're white and they should go back to Europe because they're white and this isn't their land. This is pure racism. Yet, no one in the media is telling you about that. Not one news organization have I heard has commented on that. They get away with it because everyone in the mainstream and on the left calls Trump and his supporters racist. Even if you're not a Trump supporter, this is something you can support. If you believe in free speech and the truth. The last point I want to touch on is the fact that a member of Congress is calling for a total and complete shutdown of teenagers wearing MAGA hats is utterly unconstitutional. He tweeted this out. He tweeted this out. It is right there. You can see it. It's right over here. I'm telling you, they are slowly chipping away at our First Amendment rights. And when that falls, so will everything else. In this episode alone, we prove Democrats don't care about what people claim about the people they claim they support. They also don't care about using factual evidence to start an investigation. And lastly, they don't care about your First Amendment. They don't care about freedom of speech. They just don't. Democrats have moved so far to the left, it's scary. However, the truth always wins, meaning that radicalism will not prevail in America. That's all I have for the news today. Hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all are having a wonderful Monday, and we will see you again tomorrow. Peace.